Welcome to Sparks of History, where Jewish history and world history meet. We are very honored and pleased to have with us today Rabbi Reuven Tradburks. Rabbi Tradburks received his BA from Carleton University and Rabbinic ordination Semicha from RIETS at Yeshiva University. For decades, Rabbi Tradburks served as a synagogue communal leader and rabbi in North America, including as an assistant rabbi at the Young Israel of Staten Island, rabbi of Knesseth Israel Synagogue in Birmingham, Alabama, and for 15 years as rabbi of Kehillat Shaarei Torah in Toronto, Ontario. Currently, Rabbi Tradburks is the director of the Israel office of the Rabbinical Council of America, the RCA. Additionally, Rabbi Tradburks helps run the RCA Machon Milton, an English language conversion preparation course in Jerusalem, Israel, in partnership with Shavei Israel. And of course, Rabbi Tradburks is the weekly writer of the Aliyah by Aliyah column in the very popular Torah Tidbits magazine. Thank you, Rabbi Tradburks, for being with us. We appreciate it very much.
Pleasure.
Just by way of background, what is the Rabbinical Council of America, RCA, and how is it represented in Israel today?
Okay, so the Rabbinical Council of America is really a fraternity for rabbis. It started many years ago, 75 or more years ago, as a way for rabbis to be able to gather, to support each other, to develop professional skills, and to be there for each other. I think in the kind of more modern era, it changed a little bit because the rabbi's role has changed so much. So the RCA is really a fraternity of rabbis. There are over 1,000 rabbis, but the rabbi's role has changed so much that rabbis are called upon to do public speaking, to be teachers, to be scholars, to do political advocacy, to counsel, to be aware of mental health issues, to support people, to run the synagogue like as if they're an MBA, and especially as synagogues have grown so large, many of the Orthodox synagogues, there's assistant rabbis, there's executive directors, there's a whole staff to be able to run. So the rabbi's role has changed a lot, and there's been research done. There's a very interesting institute at Duke University. Someone must have given a lot of money to have a clergy mental and physical health center at Duke University. Has done a lot of research on clergy. Obviously, Duke University is going to be a lot of Protestant clergy, but the issues and the demands are similar, and there's a lot of burnout. A lot of people suffer from unusually high incidences of heart illness, strokes. In other words, there's an association of stress-related illnesses that clergy suffer from. So as a result, a fraternity that helps rabbis by helping each other has become increasingly important. There's a lot of burnout. People just get, it's hard, the work is hard. So as a fraternity, what the RCA tries to do is help the rabbis be effective at what they're doing, and also to be well informed in issues of the day, how to respond to them, and also to be there to support the rabbis, to have a friend. I can tell you, from my experience in the rabbinate, you don't have friends. You're the people you associate with are members, and there's a natural power imbalance. So you're not going to really have a close friend in the congregation. And amongst other rabbis, everyone's busy with their own things. And so there is a need to be able to share and kind of let your hair down a little bit and be together and to have people of like mind and like experience to support each other. So that's the RCA in general. So the RCA is based in Rabbinical Council of America. It's based in North America, and the OU is the synagogue umbrella organization. The RCA is the rabbis umbrella organization. So in Israel, it's a little bit different because there are about 200 RCA members that have made Aliyah. That's a lot. That's a lot over the years. Today, the ones making Aliyah, many retirees, because fortunately in our world, many of our kids move here. And then, when we retire, we follow. But there are also a lot of younger people. People get Semicha, work in the rabbinate, but because so many, I would say universally, especially from Yeshiva University, but also I think other yeshivas in RCA Israel and Chavetz Chaim and other places, people come here to Israel to learn for a year or 2 or 3. And so there's a kind of a natural feeling that this is a place I want to aspire to live in eventually. And now there's a trend of guys wanting to do that earlier. They say, I've served my shul for 10 years. I did my thing. Now I want to go before the kids are too old, and it's going to be harder. So we have really hundreds of members who have made Aliyah. So that's one reality. But just in terms of the RCA in Israel, there was this sense about 15 years ago that there was a need to have a representative here in Israel. And that was the fallout of when Rav Amar was the chief rabbi. When Rav Amar was the chief rabbi, so he had pressure from different people about conversion, saying that the Rabbanut doesn't really have a handle on whose conversions around the world it ought to accept. And so he kind of said, okay, then let's just not accept any, and start to make criteria for who's going to be accepted. So that was a bit of a crisis, and there were many conversions and many personal status challenges, things that the Rabbinut was not accepting. And there was a sense we need someone on the ground in Israel who's going to deal with that. So I had made Aliyah just a few years old before that. And before, at the same time as well, the RCA in the United States had made a strategic plan, had done a survey of members, and had come up with a strategic plan. And one of the things identified was that they wanted to strengthen the ties with Israel, because there was more and more people getting married here, people making Aliyah, letters needed for Jewish status, many people traveling here, kids coming to study. There needed to be more of a strengthening of the representation here. So the RCA, right after my Aliyah, asked me if I would be one of the officers, meaning like the executive committee. There's 12 officers. The first time that there was an officer of the RCA living in Israel. And so I became the officer. And then they asked me if I would give some shape to this strategic plan, what could be done to enhance strengthening ties with Israel, which I did. And that's when they asked me if I would become the representative then in Israel. That's kind of the outline of the RCA's involvement here in Israel now.
So is there a parallel organization to the RCA in Israel that's not part of the RCA? Is RCA Israel Anglo-Americans that have moved to Israel? It does represent, yes. Does it include also Israelis? Is there a parallel to it? Or
so that's
very different than RCA America.
It's totally different. RCA America is helping rabbis be professional at what they do and to be a support group for that. That involves many, many things, but so the ones who have made Aliyah really don't fit into that at all. They're people who are doing education, they're doing communal work, they're doing or just working in general in high tech or other things, or retired. So it's not really parallel at all. And I think what you're getting at also is there a similar organization in Israel for Israeli rabbis? So we're an English-speaking organization, and we don't provide services in Israel for the Hebrew-speaking ones. But there is no similar organization. There are some organizations. Tzohar is a large organization of rabbis functioning as rabbis. Beit Hillel, there's an organization under Rav Shlomo Eliyahu. So there's everyone stakes their ground. The RCA is predominantly Yeshiva University, but predominantly the power of the RCA is congregational rabbis, some of our members are Chabad, and they come from Ner Yisrael, or they come from yeshivas here in Israel. They go and take jobs in America. But there's no parallel phenomena of that in Israel. Tzohar is different. It's not predominantly congregational rabbis. That's all a function of how different religious life is in Israel in general than it is in North America. So there is no similar organization here in Israel. It's a different thing.
The activities of the RCA and your activities, Rabbi Tradburks, specifically since October 7th, Simplest Torah, how have things changed? What are some of the things that you've done? Obviously, I know there's a lot of missions coming. Just tell us a little bit about what's happening now, what's happened in the last 8-9 months or so.
Yeah. Right after October 7th, the leadership of the RCA said, we have to, how should we respond to this? Everyone was in such pain. We have to respond. What do we do? The natural response of North America over the years to crises in Israel has been a little paternalistic. In other words, we need to raise money for Israel. We need to help. We need to lobby. We need to come and visit. And so certainly, I say paternalistic as a negative and a positive. In other words, a feeling that, we're here to help our poor brothers and sisters in Israel. That shift has changed over time. Now it's, Israel feels it needs to help North America. But so certainly the rabbis of the RCA were in shock and wondering, what to do and how to be helpful. So the officers of the RCA decided right away that we should do missions to Israel, together with Yeshiva University, together with Mizrahi, to have rabbis come. So the sense was to have them come on a mission to visit the wounded, visit the bereaved, go to shivas, visit soldiers, try and bring chizuk. That was the sense. And Rabbi Menachem Penner, suggested, well, you're never going to get a week that's good for all the rabbis, so do 5 weeks in a row of missions. So they asked me if I would help coordinate that. I'll just tell you personally. So my sister's daughter, my stepsister's daughter, was murdered in her kibbutz in Kibbutz Cholit on October 7th, defending her children. So I was in a depression for up until the funeral, which took a week, and for the week of Shiva. So when they asked me to coordinate these, they said to me, we'd like to bring missions and we need your help to coordinate it. I was I was in a black cloud. It was a very difficult time for me personally. My wife said to me, it's probably the best thing because you had to be so busy to coordinate these. So that was a decision that was made. It wasn't my decision because I was out of it when when they made this decision. I was so preoccupied. But they decided that let's bring these missions. So for 5 weeks in a row, and then we took a break for a month and had a sixth mission. We tried to make opportunities for rabbis to come because they felt this would be supporting their own communities in North America. To know that my rabbi is coming on my behalf to go to shivas or to go to support the chayalim on the border of Gaza was very comforting. I'm sure you felt this, others felt this, like, what do we do? How can we help? What can we, and the answer often was really nothing, send money, send equipment or whatever. But people felt very empowered that their rabbi was coming to be here with the Jewish people, Beit Sarah. So we actually we had about 100, almost 100 rabbis come over the course of those missions. A very large number of whom were from the major synagogues, the shuls in North America. And the idea and the mandate that we had was to try and offer support and say thank you, and to say we're here just to be with you, to as many people as we could. So we did this in coordination with the Mizrahi, who were just really terrific. But we went to shivas, and we went to Kikar Chatufim, the hostage center, the outside kind of vigil that was outside of Habima Theater in Tel Aviv. We went to the Matin, they call it, the center in Tel Aviv that was coordinating all of the activities for the hostage families. We went throughout Ramon a number of times to barbecues right on the Gaza border in various different places to be with the soldiers. Went into the hotels, went to Ofakim and Sderot and Kfar Aza, Zikim, different kibbutzim. And it was really a twofold effort. One was to bring some support, and one was to help the rabbis see what was going on in Israel at that time. I got one call from a mother who said, I understand the rabbis are here to come and bring chizukah, right? What about us? She said, my son's in Miluim. My daughters-in-law are suffering. She said, I'm suffering. What about us? Come visit us. We need help too. So which we did. We, through Orit Saif, wonderful Balat Chesed, runs Kedma in Efrat, coordinated a number of meetings where we came and met with mothers or wives of men who were in Miluim, and very moving, very, very moving for the rabbis. The rabbis thought they were coming to give support, and after hearing the stories and the strength and whatever, it was a feeling like we're indebted to you, women. You're fighting the home front. That was very meaningful. I'll just tell you one story from one of the missions.
Absolutely.
We went to the Mateh. They call it the Mateh. There's a building, Checkpoint Software, which is a big company on NASDAQ. Immediately the day after October 7th, cleared its offices in its high-tech building in Tel Aviv, right beside the Kiryah, and said to the hostage families, this is for you to use for whatever you need. And many, many thousands of volunteers came and helped the families there and set up a social media center and set up information and diplomacy and all different activities to help the hostages be released. So we walked through the center with our group. Someone was leading us through, a former Knesseth member who was volunteering her time as well. And as we were walking, so my job was to look around as this was going on and see who was there. So a fellow was being interviewed, interestingly, by Kikar Shabbat, or Kikar Shabbos, the Haredi news website. Anyway, this fellow was being interviewed. He had a big ponytail, and he had a picture in front of him of his family. So I saw him being interviewed. So I walked up to him afterwards and introduced myself, asked him who he was, said some of his family members were there. So he tells me, my name is Yuval Haran, and this is my family. So all the hostage families had posters of their relatives. So he had a poster with eight faces on it. He said, all of these are my relatives. I live in Kibbutz Be'eri. They're all in Gaza, all 8 of them. So I said to him, would you mind speaking to our group? So he spoke to our group. His mother was also in Gaza. His father had been killed. His mother, Shoshan Haran, was the founder of Fair Planet, one of these amazing Israeli organizations that has fed 1 million Africans by helping them grow agriculture. She's a PhD in agriculture. Anyway, a very distinguished family. Anyway, he told us the story of his family. One of the people said, how do you manage yourself? You have eight of your family members are in. So he said, well, I imagine, and he showed him a picture, my 8-year-old nephew is playing soccer in Gaza with his friend, and they're kicking a ball around. That's the image I have. And the image I have is when they get released, I'll run up to them, to the van, and hug them. Which is profound psychology. It's like imaging. I'll image that in my head. So I said to him as we wrapped up, I said, would you mind if we said there's a prayer to say that we've been saying in our synagogues, a prayer to say for the hostages? Do you mind if we say that prayer? And he said, secular Shomer Hatzair Kibbutz Be'eri. He said, well, actually, there's a prayer I say every night. So I don't remember the words. It starts, Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, something like that. I say it every night. He said, could we say that prayer together? So our group of rabbis in the middle of secular Tel Aviv, and all the people started gathering around. We all sang it together with Yuval Haran. Yuval Haran took Jerry Stein, when Jerry Seinfeld was here, he also took him to Kibbutz Be'eri. Anyway, the next week, 7 of his 8 family members were released from captivity. It was very moving for us all to have met him. Yeah.
Incredible. Tradburks, you mentioned before that for good and for bad, you use the word paternalistic in terms of the relationship between American diaspora Jewry and Israel. Do you see from that relationship changing now? Has it changed? I mean, certainly, American Jewry raised $1 billion since October 2nd. It's an astronomical number, almost beyond belief. But has the relationship, is it changing? Is it going to change? Is it no longer going to be paternalistic?
That's a very good question. I think that there's a complication in the relationship. I'm just talking about the religious world, let's say. We feel here in Israel that we're at the center of the Jewish world. This is where it's at. Chutz La'aretz is in a holding pattern till they get here. I never spoke this way before I made Aliyah. Now that I made Aliyah, my views changed.
We're allowed to speak that way now. Okay.
I used to be one of those paternalistic rabbis in North America, and now I'm a paternalistic the other way. We feel. I don't think you even though so many of the people that we associate with come here often. And they're here often, and they have kids here, and the rabbis and the fine leadership of North America, they really know Israel well. But living here in the religious life in Israel is different. It's different. I don't, I've struggled for 15 years to put words to it. I'm not sure how to describe it. I often felt in North America, there's certain things you ought to do. You ought to mark Yom Ha'atzmaut. You ought to think about Yerushalayim at a wedding, breaking the glass. Here we don't ought to do things. We do. In other words, it's different. It's in your heart and it's in your soul. And I think that leads to some of the paternalism that goes from Israel to the diaspora. We just feel we're living it here. It's like for real. We're living the thing like with our heart and soul, and you're living it kind of, of course, just one last point on that. The paternalism the other way is that America is blessed with tremendous resources. There's tremendous wealth, and many of the things that happened here in Israel only happened because of that support. And that's a reality, and that's a great thing. It's a great blessing, and certainly the political support from America. So I think it's all shifting around, but as to how that's shifting around is it's not clear. And I will say, apologize, the paternalism that we have towards North America is not fair. It is not fair, or the feelings of superiority that we have is not fair. American Jewry is rich and dynamic and accomplished, and it's not totally fair, but still, that's sometimes how we feel.
Rabbi Tradburks, you had mentioned earlier that the issue of conversion was an issue that impacted on the RCA and how the RCA would deal with Israeli society. What is the RCA's involvement today regarding conversion? What are some of the issues? We know it's a very complicated issue. It's in the press a lot. Just give us an overview of conversion in Israel, RCA's role, what has been done, what needs to be done.
Yeah, so there's two different aspects to that. It's conversions that occurred in Chutz La'aretz, and people are moving to Israel or coming to Israel to marry. That's one issue. In other words, the chief rabbinous recognition of conversions that are done in Chutz La'aretz. That's one area of challenge. So that was what Rav Amar kind of changed. He felt we have to have criteria to accept conversions from Chutz La'aretz. When we talk about Chutz La'aretz, it's not just New York and New Jersey and Los Angeles and Chicago. It's also Tashkent and Moscow and, the Far East and Germany and South America, Brazil. And, every area has its different structure. And the Rabbanut had trouble getting a handle on who's who. So that was just the reality. So we partly in confluence with Rav Amar's interest in setting criteria for conversion, we in the RCA at the same time, beginning back in the 80s, had discussed making centralized Batei Din. So we did that. That was a way of avoiding the problem of getting a certificate and says, here's a guy Tradburks. Who in the world is that? What kind of name is that? And who in the world is this rabbi? And the Rabbanut here wasn't equipped to figure out who's who. So if you have a central Bet Din, Toronto, Montreal, New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Los Angeles, then they don't have to know who it is because they recognize those Batei Din. So we centralized conversion in North America as a way to try and help that. And at the same time, when questions came up in the Rabbanut, this is one of the things I worked on, was we developed a warm collaborative relationship with specifically this in this past 10 years with Rav Lau, in which his office would be in touch with myself or Rabbi Zilberman in the United States weekly, more than once a week. In other words, when issues would come up with them, And so that there was a really wonderful cooperation between the two. But that's one area. The other area, which was just my initiative, was I had many people here who felt they needed a course and they needed advocates to help them in their conversion with the Rabbanut, English speakers. So there are only there's probably about 80 or 100 courses in the country preparing people for conversion, but most are in Hebrew, some are in Russian, some in Spanish, and 3 in the whole country in English. And we're one of those courses to help people prepare for their conversion in English. And so I run that course here in Jerusalem. The challenge, I'll just mention this one thing. The challenge in conversion in Israel for those who are non-Israeli is that once you convert, you have a right to citizenship. So the government, not the Rabbanut, the Misrad Pnim, the government wants to make sure that people don't use conversion as a way of getting citizenship in the state of Israel. Now, when someone is coming from the United States, citizenship in Israel is not an upgrade, or Sweden, or England. If you're coming from Nigeria, or you're coming from Ukraine, or perhaps South America, citizenship in Israel is an upgrade. So the government, so conversion for non-Israelis becomes very bureaucratic, difficult, documentation. You have to pass, the Misrad Pnim has to agree to you starting a conversion course. And so that's part of what I help with, is help people to negotiate that, support them in that, help them go to their interviews, and to help people who are sincere to be able to convert, knowing that that's going to allow them to make Aliyah afterwards.
What kind of numbers are we talking about when we talk about English-speaking conversions? On an annual basis, how large are these classes? Who are these people?
Three questions. So the answer is English is the second language of the world. So English is North America and England, but also Sweden and Germany and China and Korea and South America. Spanish. People coming from Brazil do not speak Spanish; they speak Portuguese. So for some coming from Brazil, English is the language that they're going to need to study in. So we have about 20 or 25 a year. They go through our course. The number of foreigners that convert a year is probably 200 or 300. So we have a decent percentage of that. There's a wonderful course in Tel Aviv run by an RCA member, Ariel Constantine. They have probably 60 or 80 a year that convert through that. But the people, I keep saying to my wife, she said, I'm tired of this. I want to pass this off to someone else. She said, no, you don't. You love it. You love it. Because the people that you meet are just really some very special people. I never knew this. I ran the Bet Din in Toronto for 10 years. So I was at 500 conversions, a lot. So this is kind of a passion of mine. But I only recently became aware of this expression that many converts have, which I used to hear, but I didn't know what they meant. That I'm not converting to become Jewish. I'm going back to really what I was. So we have this idea that all converts were at Sinai and that they got scattered around the world and now they're just coming back. But I've had numerous people say this to me recently. Now I know what they mean. They mean, no, there is something inside me. I'm not taking on a religion that's different than me. I've found my home. This is who I am. And I'm recovering what is inside me. I don't know how you would interpret that in terms of Kabbalah, in terms of philosophy. Is this really a Jewish soul that migrated? Or, could be. We never know. But we had a woman convert recently. She was the CEO of a media company in Boston. She became enamored with Judaism. It took her 18 years to do her Orthodox conversion. It took her 10 years before she would even call a rabbi. She was so nervous to do it. And so I know when people call me, it's like, it takes a lot of nerve to just make that call. Anyway, there's people from all around the world.
Have you seen a shift?
One of the comments on that is that Nefesh B'Nefesh, recently they released some of their statistics. So amongst the families making Aliyah from North America, 70% of the families are Orthodox. Amongst the singles, it's the opposite. 70% of the singles are not Orthodox. The world being what it is, if a person is non-Orthodox, there's a certain percentage are going to have mothers that did non-Orthodox conversions or patrilineal descent. Mother's not Jewish at all. So there's a certain number that come doing what I would call, conversions to be able to comply with the standards of Israel, which are really Orthodox standards. So we have a number who have previously converted conservative reform in North America who now want to do an Orthodox conversion.
Have you seen in the last 10, 15, 20 years, coming from the activities that you led in Toronto and now here in Israel, has there been a shift in the whole conversion area? Is it different types of people? Is there more interest, less interest, or is it just too nuanced to really define it in any way?
Yeah, so there's one trend that has been happening, and that is that in years past, if a person was conservative or reform, there was a chance that ideas of Shabbat and kosher and learning Torah would resonate with them. And often, if they were non-Orthodox conversions previously or patrilineal, they would come and want to do an Orthodox conversion. That's changing. There's not as much nostalgia and warm feelings for things called Orthodox in the non-Orthodox world. The feelings have become, and it could be because of the Rabbinical, religion and state issues, there's a feeling that Orthodox is tainted. In other words, not nostalgia for Shabbos, but actually a knee-jerk reaction against it. So that's changed somewhat. I will say, though, that October 7th changed things for conversion, too. I had a number of calls of people who told me that after October 7th, I thought I have to be Jewish. I had one woman call me in tears. She lives in Carmiel. She was in our course. Her two boys were going into the army. Their conversions had been finished. And she called me and asked me, if I die, she's 40 years old. If I die, will I be buried in a Jewish cemetery? Because she had not yet finished her conversion. And she was in the line of fire in the north. It was painful, very painful. But I had another fellow who told me the Shabbat after October 7th, his mother was not Jewish. His father was an Israeli. He grew up here in Israel, but spoke English, spent a lot of time in Chutz La'aretz. And a 35-year-old guy, he told me the Shabbat after October 7th, I kept Shabbat in whatever way he knew. I just felt, if they're going to kill us for being Jewish, I want to live Jewish. A number of people told me that.
Any final thoughts of whether it's on the RCA conversions, life in Israel, a message to us here in Israel, a message to all our friends and family outside of Israel, in closing?
Well, there's lots more to say, but I'll just say this, something I read in Torah Tidbits. Actually, I think I wrote it, Torah Tidbits, is that the Jewish people in Sefer Bamidbar, you have complaint, struggle, quarrel, difficulty, failing, one after another, disappointments. You have the spies are sent in, that turned out bad. Korach rebels, that was bad. They complain about water, that was bad. They complain about meat, that was irritating. Complaint after complaint after complaint. And yet, they're told when you get to the land of Israel, make sure when you harvest your produce, you give the gifts of Truma and Meiser. You give the gifts. And when you go into the land of Israel and you have bread, you have to give the gifts of challah. In other words, you're going to get there. It's as if Hashem says, you make mistakes, you go through difficult times, you aggravate me, but you're going to get there. You're getting to the land of Israel regardless of all this. So that's how I feel also here. We're going to get through. This was bad. We're living through a terribly painful time. You know, I just feel myself like my whole soul has changed. In other words, there's pain that will take a long time to abate. You know, I've just been to so many shivas and so many. As part of my job as the RCA, I go to shivas. I've been to so many of them and so many like terrific people. But we're limping, but we're going to get through this. The depth of religious experience that we have here in Israel is just growing. It's growing deeper and deeper. We have a lot of work to do to bridge our differences and bridge our gap. But the one thing I think that this whole time showed us was there was unity right after October 7th. And the reason for that was because we had a common purpose. Common purpose was to support each other, was to fight Hamas, was to assert ourselves, was to be there for each other. In other words, we were able to identify our common purpose. What was our common purpose? To be there for each other and to be there for the Jewish people. That's the common purpose that's going to get us through this. Our common purpose is we have a wonderful country, historic, prophetic, return to Israel. Our common purpose is to make sure this country is healthy. We're going to be fine. And that's how I feel. I'm optimistic that the pain of all of this will make us stronger people and a stronger nation.
Rabbi Tradburks, thank you so much for your words of chizuk and inspiration. And you should continue with the RCA to go from strength to strength and chayil to chayil. And thank you again so much for
Thank you.
today's talk. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.